Good evening everybody, welcome to our concept session for the English language, and we have been looking at quite a number of question types, right? We've addressed specific question types, we looked at some new patterns, whether it's phrase connectors or spot the error. And if you were here the last session, I specifically said that we're going to break it down and look at some basics with respect to grammar when it comes to spot the error. Now the advantage of that is when we spend time understanding concepts or what type of errors to look for, whether it's prepositions or noun numbers or articles or subject verb agreement or tenses or whatever it is, it helps us with even fill in the blanks or close passage, because there are even errors pertaining to collocations, right? When I say collocations, this particular preposition has to go with this word, right? So we're gonna get down to basics, right? And we may not have time to, so this is going to take a couple of sessions, okay, because spot the error is vast, right? There are so many error types. So I would encourage you to not miss out on these classes, especially if spot the error is a challenging area for you, right? If you're somebody who's always confused, you're somebody who your basics, who you know that you're, for whom your basics are not that strong, right? So this is one good question type to actually master enough grammar that is needed for the bank exams, right? That's what we're looking at. Let's get started with these questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at spot the error questions that we're familiar with, right? The usual pattern that we always face in the exam is, there are a sentence is divided into 4-5 parts. Choose the part that has the error, and ignore errors of punctuation. That's the direction, right? We're familiar with that question type, and that's the pattern that we're going to look at. But we're going to focus on what should we look out for in terms of the error types. Okay, let me share the PPT. So let's look at our first question, which is: a large scale exchange of nuclear weapons will produce unprecedented amounts of radiation that can penetrate into the biological tissue. Okay, this is the question, right? Do you think there is an error, or do you think it's okay? What do you say? I want you to read carefully, and then let's look at where the error is, or where do you think the error is. So we have the sentence is divided basically into 3 parts, right? The fourth part is just which says no error. So the error either has to be in part A, part B, or part C, or it may not be at all in any of the parts. The sentence can also be an error-free sentence. Any guesses? Okay, so what we'll do is, as a practice, I will give you about 30 seconds, right, which is the decent amount of time that we can spend on each question, and then we're going to move forward. So you've come back and said part B is where the error is. According to you, why so? What do you think is wrong with part B? Right, you said part B is where the error is. So what is the error in part B? Okay, so you've come back and said, hey, let's replace amounts with amount of, right? A large scale exchange of nuclear weapons will produce unprecedented amounts of radiation. Okay, so in terms of amount or amounts, right, both are grammatically correct and accepted. And here in the context, we are referring to nuclear weapons, which is more than one weapon, right? So in terms of quantity, amounts, there's nothing wrong with amounts. You don't have to necessarily change that, right? That's not where the error is. Can you think of any other area where you feel the error could possibly be? So let me give you an example, okay? So I could say, what is the amount of salt that you put in this dish, right? So there we're talking about how much of salt did you put, right? So there either I can say a large amount or a small amount. Yeah. So in the context here, we're talking about a large scale exchange of nuclear weapons. So in terms of a plural noun number, amounts is fine, right? You don't have to really change amount to amounts, and that's not where the error is, in fact. right? I would say it complements the plural noun number, weapons. But anywhere else, are you able to identify anything else as an issue? Or I could say, she served the soup in small amounts. Just to give you another example with amounts. So grammatically, that's not where the error, but the error is actually in part C. If you look at it, it says that can penetrate into the biological tissue. Your word is penetrate, right? Penetrate itself means what? Something that is going into something, right? So that into is very superfluous in nature, which means it is an unnecessary preposition there, right? So this question has a prepositional error. First of all, let me throw the context to you, right? It says penetrate into. So what is the meaning of penetrate? So this is to do with, I would say, a superfluous error, okay? And I don't need that into, because penetrate, if I look at the meaning of penetrate, right, that itself means, what does it mean? Pass into something, right? Or you're forcing your way into. So this word by itself covers the meaning of into, to enter into something. Yeah, so this into again is unnecessary, it's not needed. So this is an unnecessary preposition that I don't need. Okay, obviously this is a prepositional error. Part C is where the error. So I can look at this error as, either a prepositional error or a superfluous error, right? Remember, in terms of types of errors, right, I can put this in the category of being superfluous, which means I don't need this extra word, unnecessary word in the context, or I can look at this as a prepositional error. Okay, I give you some example sentences, so let me do that, right, just to put it out there. Amount, right? So when you're referring to something as an amount, basically the meaning that you're bringing in is how much of it, right? And that's why I gave you an example. I can say how much salt, how much amount of salt did you put in this dish, right? You don't say how much amounts of salt, you say how much amount of salt. But for amounts, right, I'm going to write it here. So basically, when would you say, it's in the plural, when you're referring to a plural noun number, right? So I can say large amounts of money were wasted, right? Or I could say increasing amounts of force are necessary. Yeah, just to clarify the difference. And usually if you see, there are exceptions, but mostly amount, is followed by a uncountable number, noun number, amount of work, amount of salt, right? The amount of work that he had to do was horrific. Okay, just for you to understand the difference. So in the context, we're looking at nuclear weapons, we're looking at a plural noun number, so amounts is fine. Yeah, that's. Remember, we're going to spend some time understanding what are all the possible prepositional errors, but let's move on. I want you to give a try for the second one. Young children should not sit close to the TV set as it affects on their eyes. Young children should not sit close to the TV set as it affects on their eyes. So where do you think the error is? As soon as you read the sentence, you might be able to figure out where the error is, right? Something might sound incorrect or awkward, but let's look at it quickly. The only thing that you need to do is remove the on in part C, right? It's an unnecessary on. Why? Because you don't need that on. Without that on itself, the sentence is completely accurate. Let's look at it. Young children should not sit close to the TV set as it affects their eyes, right? Not affects on their eyes. So here, again, just like how we saw in the previous, right? Into, it's an unnecessary preposition. I don't need this preposition here, right? It's not superfluous, It's just that I don't need this preposition here, right? So again, this is a prepositional error. Yeah? Clear? So we move forward. So far we've looked at unnecessary prepositions. The first one also can be categorized under superfluous meaning. The second one, it's just that I don't need this preposition here, right? Without that itself, the sentence is meaningfully complete. So let's look at this one. Rohit was in need of money and sold out his gold medal for 200 rupees to one of his friends. Where do you think the error is? Again, you come across an unnecessary preposition here. Where is that? Are you able to identify that? Or not really a preposition, I would say, it's an unnecessary adverb in fact. So you've got the hang of it. So whichever is unnecessary, you remove that. In fact, out can also act as a preposition, no doubt, right? But in the context here, it's a adverb, right? Because sold itself gives me that meaning. He sold his gold medal. So I don't have to say sold out, which is incorrect, and that's not the meaning that we're looking at. In fact, sold out has a completely different meaning. Are you familiar with that? So, for example, in terms of a phrasal verb, we understand that a verb plus either a preposition or an adverb is a phrasal verb, right? Let's just look at that context. So, sold out, right? Sold is the verb, out is my adverb. So, sold out is a phrasal verb. So, when I say something is sold out, right? So, if I say the match between Mumbai Kings and CSK, the tickets were sold out. If I say that, which means what? All the tickets, basically everybody kind of bought it. There is not a ticket left. Okay, that's what it means, right? So, that's the meaning of sold out, and that's not the meaning that we need in the context. Yeah? Or there's a concert happening and you desperately are looking for tickets, but when you call them to find out, they say, we're sorry, all the tickets have been sold out, which means there are no more tickets left for the concert, right? And that's not the meaning that we need in this context. So Rohit was in need of money and he sold his gold medal for 200. So this is an unnecessary word here, like you very rightly said, and the error is in part C, where we need to get rid of the word out. Yeah. So far, we looked at the first two questions where it's a prepositional error. I don't need that unnecessary word. It has a superfluous meaning as well in the first one. Penetrate into, not needed. The second one we saw again, unnecessary preposition. I don't need that. On, right? That's what it was. Affects on. And here again, I don't need that out, an unnecessary adverb. So one of the categories that you need to look out for when you're looking at spot the error is there an unnecessary preposition or an adverb, right? So that's something that I want you to keep in mind. That's one of the first concepts or first strategies you need to, not strategy, first element that you need to look out for when it comes to spot the error. Is there an unnecessary word in the context? Let's look at our next question. Our laxity in duty increases with our aversion for work. Our laxity in duty increases with our aversion for work. What does that mean? Our laxity in duty increases with our aversion for work. Do you think there is an error here at all? Don't worry about words that you may not, follow. For example, maybe laxity, right? Laxity is a noun. It's the state or quality of being lax, meaning loose. The word laxity itself refers to something where you're being negligent about something, you're neglecting something, right? There is some sort of a slackness in you, right? Leniency, sloppiness. These are all the you're not concerned about something, which means you're not being diligent about it. Maybe I'm using big words. What do I say? You're not being intentional about it. So let's say if I say, hey, tomorrow, we have a test, and the test is exclusively for spot the error, and then you're showing a lot of laxity, which means you're unconcerned about it, right? You're like, yeah, so what, big deal, right? You're not, what do I say? You're being careless, right? That's what it means. So our laxity in duty increases with our aversion for work. Now that you understand the context, so you come back and say, hey, there's no error, everything is fine as it is, right? Let's just put down what is the meaning of laxity, so that when people watch the video, they'll know what this is all about, right? So we said it's slackness. I gave an example as well, being negligent, right? Careless, right? Unconcerned. These are all some of the synonyms of laxity. So when I am displaying carelessness or I'm being negligent in my duty, how does that increases with our aversion? Aversion means strong dislike, right? Now please notice, aversion is your clue word, okay? And always when you have certain words get associated with certain prepositions, it's always, so this is a pure collocation, okay? What are collocations? Associated words that go together, right? You heard me say this word a million times. So aversion always is associated with the preposition to and not for, right? You have an aversion to something. So for example, I can say I have a strong aversion to spiders. I have a strong aversion to snakes, right? I dislike snakes and spiders. You always have an aversion to something, not for something. So aversion to, right? Just to give you an example, let me write it down. I have a strong aversion to snakes and spiders, right? Some people might have an aversion to, they don't like waking up in the early morning, right? So Raj has a deep aversion to getting up in the morning, right? He just doesn't like to wake up in the morning. So it's always aversion to and not for. Therefore the error is in part C, right? You need to change for to. Yeah. So we can look at some more example sentences with respect to collocations, where I'm saying, hey, this word has to associate with this word, right? This is the preposition that goes with this word predominantly. Let's look at this. The earth we live in is enveloped on all sides by air. The earth we live in is enveloped on all sides by air. Do you think there is an error in this sentence? If yes, where? I want you to apply a little bit of logic also in this context, right? Try and understand the meaning that the sentence is bringing. The earth we live in is enveloped. The clue phrase obviously is for you, all sides by air, right? All sides being your clue phrase, which means, imagine this, right? You're in a room and there are 4 sides to the room, okay? So when we're talking about air, it just doesn't make logical sense to say that the air is on each side, right? Envelope meaning you're surrounded. So the right preposition there would be from these 4 sides, it cannot be on the 4 sides, right? The air, you are enveloped by air, not on the 4 sides, but from these 4 sides. So that's where the error is, right? So you remove on and you change it to from. You are enveloped from all sides by air. We're referring to air. Air obviously again is another clue word, right? So here we're talking about an incorrect preposition. An incorrect preposition, I need to change on to from. Enveloped from all sides by air. Clear? The error is in part C. Let's move on. I found it difficult to remove the chewing gum that stuck with my cap. I found it difficult to remove the chewing gum that stuck with my cap. Where do you think the error is? So your 30 seconds is up. Let's look at this question. Are you able to identify any clue words? It's very simple question to follow, right? You don't have any difficult words that will hamper your understanding of the meaning. I found it difficult to remove the chewing gum that stuck, not with, but to, right? You stuck to your cap. Again, stuck plus to is the collocation, right? So usually stuck takes up the preposition. Yes, you're right. You got that right, right? It has to take up the preposition to. So at least the last 3 questions that we've looked at, right? It's aversion to, enveloped from, stuck to. So these are all incorrect prepositions, no doubt, but these are also collocations. So let me just give you some random collocations where we're saying, hey, this word will associate only with this preposition. Let's look at a couple of examples, okay? So, for example, accused of, right? Somebody can accuse you of something, right? It cannot be accused for, it cannot be accused to, yeah? Somebody can accuse you of something, yeah? You can be different from someone, not different to, although there could be an exception in terms of an example sentence. You are eligible for something. I can hint at something, right? Somebody hinted at, right? He hinted at something. I can be pleased with something, right? I can get invited to a place, invited to a party or a function or whatever it is. So do you see? So it's important for us to get as familiar with these collocations, right? It's either an adjective plus a preposition or a verb plus a preposition or an adverb. So and this comes, you can master this only when you read a lot, right? Because when you read, it kind of registers, okay, these are some of the words associated, because collocations are nothing but set phrases that are repeated, right, in different situations by us. We might even be familiar with those collocations, but we need to remember to in fact recollect it at the time of the exam, so we can identify errors pertaining to this. Most of our problem will be solved if we know what to look for. Yeah, in spot the error, if I know, okay, this is also a type of error, then I am looking for that error, right, and I'll be able to spot it. So far we've looked at unnecessary prepositions or adverbs, and then we've looked at the next set that we looked at is incorrect prepositions or collocations that we need to be familiar with. Yeah, let's move on to the next question. In my opinion, this boy is very honest and can be depended. In my opinion, this boy is very honest and can be depended. Yeah, we do have a separate list, about 500 collocations which are compiled and available for you to go through in a PDF format, right? Just go to vocabulary section. You should be able to find that. I think we have idioms and phrases list. There's a collocation list as well. So please go through that. I just gave you a handful of it. There's some 500 there for you to go through. 250 to 500, I think. So what error do you think? What is the error you think is there in this? In my opinion, this boy is very honest and can be depended. What? So you're saying C, part C. What do we have to do in part C? Something is missing, right? So what should we add in order to make this sentence complete? We just have to add depended upon, which means there's something missing, right? This category is missing prepositions, right? Something is depended upon, right? In my opinion, this boy is very honest and I can depend on this guy, right? That's what the context is saying. Because he is honest, I can depend on him, right? So he can be depended upon. In terms of sentence construction, it's coming towards the end, right? I can't say depended on, depended upon. Yeah. So in my opinion, this boy is very honest and can be depended upon. So it's a missing preposition. That's what the error is about. Yeah. Are you with me? Yeah. So let's move on. So in terms of, just so you know, right, there's not much of a difference in meaning when it comes to depend on and depend upon. Okay. Pretty much the same meaning. I think upon is more formal, right? Like, I mean, where would we use it? Once upon a time, right? In statements like that, right? Or upon receiving, a call, he took action, right? In a very formal context is where you will see upon used, but in terms of sentence construction, right, this is preferred. Yeah. So let's move on to the next question. As the party was going, we noticed Mr. Ray fall back in his chair, gasping for breath. Okay. So as the party was going, we noticed Mr. Ray fall back in his chair and gasping for breath. So I'm waiting for your response. Where do you think the error is? Again, as you read the sentence, you should be able to identify that there's something wrong in this part, right? Something sounds funny or something sounds awkward or something is missing. Which part is that? On to be added after. Yes, right? So as the party was going on, so again this is an error pertaining to a missing preposition. As the party was going on, we noticed Mr. Ray fall back in his chair, gasping for breath. So something was happening and then they saw another event happening, not event as in an accident or a mishap. So again, a missing preposition context. Let's look at this one. For nearly half a century, he lived in that village, sharing the joys and sorrows of the people there. But later, he left the village and has not been heard of since. Yeah, so look at the question and then you tell me. For nearly half a century, he lived in that village, sharing the joys and sorrows of the people there. But later, he left the village and has not been heard of since. Where do you think the error is? Yeah, I think a lot of us panic when we look at long, complicated sentences, right? We somehow feel there could be a possibility of, multiple errors, or the tendency is to skip. But as long as we understand meaning, right, you can break it down. Look at part A. It says, for nearly half a century, he lived in that village. Okay, so that makes complete sense, right? 50 years. He lived in that village, sharing the joys and sorrows of the people there. So we're talking about a large mass of a large number, so joys and sorrows of each and every one of them, so that makes sense in terms of noun number. But later, he left the village and has not been heard. So we see the tense change, right? Present perfect tense, and has not been heard, which means from the time that he left, right, he has not been heard of since. The only thing that's missing here is since then, right? I need another word to complete meaning. Since when? From the time he left that village, right? So that brings in completion of meaning. I have not heard of this at all, right? Somebody maybe shares with you a particular concept or a particular principle, or if they say, let's say for example, these weird superstitions that people believe in. For example, if by mistake, if you what do I say, hit someone's head. I think they took it in a movie as well. I think it's a Telugu movie. So if you hit somebody by mistake on the head, you need to hit them back, otherwise horns will grow, right? So when somebody is sharing something like that, and if you've never heard of that, how do you say it? I've never heard of such thing. That is weird, right? That just doesn't make sense. So I've never heard of is a collocation. It's a construction as it is. So, and there's nothing wrong in that. So has not been heard of is, I don't want you to look at of since. The expression is I have not heard of such thing, right? So the collocation is not of since. The collocation is heard of, right? That is your collocation. So don't get confused. You are confused because you're saying, hey, how can of come before since? That's not. The collocation is heard of. You have either heard of it, or for the same example that I gave, you can come back and say, yes, I've heard people, I've heard of people say that. I don't know how true it is, but I've heard of people say that, right? So heard of is the collocation, not of since. And here, we just need to add then, which brings in the meaning of since when? Since the time he left the village. Right, so the error is no doubt in part C, but it's not what you said. You don't have to change of or remove of. You just have to add then after since. Yeah. So at least in the last three example sentences, what we've looked at, there is something missing, right? And always remember, when you remove a preposition from a sentence, the meaning is incomplete, right? It sounds awkward. Something is funny, something is wrong. Even if you are not able to narrow down or identify that, oh, okay, this is the preposition that is missing. But when you read the sentence, you should be able to identify that this part, there's something wrong with this part. Why? Because it does not complete meaning. So prepositions, the function of a preposition is to always complete meaning. Right? It's like saying, this pen is the table. That doesn't make sense, right? How can I say this pen is the table? What is missing? On is missing, right? This pen is on the table. That makes sense where I'm talking about the location of the pen, right? So if I remove a preposition, the meaning is just awkward, it's incomplete, it's illogical. He is standing, me. He is standing me, what? He is standing beside me, right? I need that preposition to complete meaning. There is water, the cup. There is water, what? Something is missing. There is water in the cup, right? So we need to keep this in mind. So some of the things so far we've looked at is, let's do a quick recap before we move to the next question, right? We've looked at unnecessary prepositions or adverbs. We've looked at incorrect prepositions where I'm saying, hey, I need to be familiar with as many collocations as possible, because if I know that this word is associated with this preposition, I am able to identify that this preposition is incorrect, right? And the third one is missing prepositions, which are not completing the meaning of the sentence. Yeah. So when it comes to prepositions, these are the three things that you need to look for. What's missing, what's unnecessary, what is incorrect. Okay. Let's move on. Let's look at the next question. The sun whose ray give life to the earth was venerated as God by our ancestors. Again, you may not know the meaning of venerated, but I want you to still apply context clues and guess the meaning of venerated. Venerate, right? Just guess the meaning, right? I mean, look at the context. What is the meaning? The sun whose ray give life to the earth was venerated as God by our ancestors. So basically, we understand that, we know this from history. We've read in a lot of storybooks and epics, right? Where the elements of nature were considered as God, right? Because they were so powerful, there was so much of force, whether it's the sun or the moon or whatever it is, right? So what can the meaning of venerated be? The sun whose ray give life to the earth was venerated. So the sun was venerated as God by our ancestors. Guess what can be the meaning? Definitely it's a positive word, right? If we are looking at the sun, they basically looked up or looked at the sun as God, our ancestors. Superflux? Nahi baba. Okay, because you put that down there, let me just clarify that to you. It's superfluous. Let me write that down for you, okay? Superfluous. Superfluous means which is redundant. That can be another unfamiliar word for you. Redundant means repetitive in meaning, okay? Like it's an unnecessary word. I don't need that word because it gives the same meaning. Basically what it means is it's like showing reverence, right? You show reverence to God, right? Which means you consider it holy, sacred. So venerated means they kind of showed reverence to the sun as though it was God, right? Now, but where is our error? Let's come back to the objective of identifying the error in the context. The sun gives more than one rays, right? It cannot be ray. You just don't have one ray of light coming from the sun, right? Rays of light. So which means this is a noun number error. Remember, noun number singular, plural, right? This is the basic. One pen, two pens, three pens, right? Yeah. So singular noun number, plural noun number. In the context, I need a plural noun number. Ray is incorrect. Rays. So the error is in part B. Yeah. The sun whose rays give life to the earth was venerated as God by our ancestors. Let's look at the next one. Yavanika is one of the latest addition to good drama which appeared in recent times. Read that context as you read it. I hope you're able to identify the error in this one. It's not very difficult. we've looked at this pattern, especially this sentence construction. There is a phrase which is a clue for you in the context. Try and see if you can identify that phrase. So basically, your clue phrase is this, right? One of the. Now this phrase one of the is always followed by a plural noun number. Yeah, we know that. So Yavanika is one of the latest additions, not addition. Again, this is a noun number error. Yeah, no, it is addition, not addition. So basically they're saying Yavanika is the recent one that got added to good drama, not addition. You are changing the entire word choice, but the word choice is correct. Addition is absolutely completing the meaning of the context. I don't need addition. What is an addition actually? Tell me. You tell me, you should know, right? Because you said it. What is addition? See, in the context is talking about an addition is a one form of a published text, right? It's like saying it's like basically saying total number of copies that a book has. Not just a book, it can even be a newspaper or any other published material, right? So in the context, we don't need addition. They're saying, hey, to good drama, Yavanika is the latest that has been added, right? Additions, one of the latest addition, one of the is always followed by, which means because we're saying one among a lot of things, right? So one of the is your clue phrase. Whenever you have one of the in a context, it will always be followed by a plural noun number. One of the students came up to me and said that their most challenging question type is spot the error. One of the boys fell down and got hurt in yesterday's match. One of the girls was crying. We don't know what happened. We need to find out, right? So one of the is always followed by a plural noun number. Okay. So the error is in part C. You change addition to additions. That's it. Yavanika is one of the latest additions to good drama which appeared in recent times. Okay, let's move on. Our soldiers were better trained than that of enemies. Our soldiers were better trained. Our soldiers were better trained than that of enemies. Where is the error? Okay, so again here we're saying our soldiers were better trained, and if you look at the context has plural noun numbers, right? Soldiers and enemies. So we're not talking about one soldier, but we're talking about multiple soldiers, plural noun. We're not talking about one enemy, we're talking about multiple enemies, more than one enemy, again a plural noun, which means there is comparison happening, right? Our soldiers were better trained, then that always refers to a singular entity, singular noun. है ना? He is better than that boy. They are better than those people, right? Which means I need that has to be replaced. The error is in part C. I need to replace that with to match the plural noun numbers. Yeah. So these are all errors pertaining to noun numbers, which means in the context I need to look out for, is there a singular noun or a plural noun, and are those that are all demonstrative pronouns, right? Are the pronouns aligning itself to the noun number, right? In the previous question also, there are certain phrases where I know that after that phrase only a plural noun number will come. Likewise, even indefinite pronouns, right? Everybody, everyone, anybody, right? All of that is followed by a singular verb, and depends on the context. So these are things that you need to be familiar with, right? That should be at the tip of your fingers. One of the comes mean it'll be followed by a plural noun number. Yeah. So you cannot miss out on basic details like this. Let's move on. A trained gang of sailors was employed on the ship. A trained gang of sailors was employed on the ship. And I will give you a clue. Okay, the clue in this context is the ship, and of course sailors. So I knew you would say this, right? This is not a subject verb agreement error. Why? Let's go to the context. The context says we're talking about sailors. Obviously sailors, which means it has to be associated with a ship, and that's why I pointed that out as clue words, right? Now here we are talking about an incorrect. We talk collective nouns. Have you heard of collective nouns? Herd of cows, herd of buffaloes, bunch of bananas, a flock of birds, right? These are all collective nouns. Flock, herd, bunch. Likewise, if you notice, it says gang of sailors. Now usually that particular collective noun gang is used with a gang of robbers, a gang of thieves, a gang of men, right? So in the context, because we're talking about sailors and ship, the right collective noun will be crew. C-R-E-W, a crew of sailors, right? Because a gang is usually associated in a negative context. A gang of thieves, a gang of robbers, they're up to some mischief, they're up to something unlawful, right? So, like a gang of men decided to rob a bank, right? So this has nothing to do with subject verb agreement. In fact, collective nouns always take up singular verbs. That's one of the rules of subject verb agreement, right? So it is, the error is in part A, where it's an incorrect collective noun. So it's important for you to know, be familiar with your collective nouns, right? Crew of sailors, not gang of sailors. Gang of robbers, yes. Gang of thieves, yes. Yeah. So if you look up collective noun, you can Google it and you'll come up with a lot of collective nouns, like I said, flock of birds, herd of cows, right? These are also collocations that you should be familiar with. Herd goes with cows, pack of wolves. Some collective nouns for you in terms of collocation, yeah. And so if they say herd of birds, it's incorrect, right? Because it's an incorrect collective noun associated with that. It has to be flock of birds and not herd of birds, because herd is associated with cows or buffaloes, right? Like saying a class of students. You can't say a herd of students. You can't say a flock of students. A pack of thieves. I'm just giving you some random collective nouns, common collective nouns, right? Team of players, right? Or a panel of experts. Flock of birds, even sheep, flock of sheep. So get familiar with all of this. Yeah, pride of lions. So then you will be able to recognize anything which is incorrect in terms of collocation when it comes to collective nouns. Yeah, okay, let's move on. Interviews for the posts of lecturers will begin from Monday. Interviews for the posts of lecturers will begin from Monday. Your clue word is lecturers. Now tell me where the error is. Where is the error? Okay, so if you've not been able to identify it, let me tell you that the interview is happening for only one post, which is lecturer post, right? Which means it cannot be posts. There are not multiple posts. In the context, there is only one. Post means position, right? So it will be the post and not posts. The post of lecturers. So the interview is happening only for this post. Again, noun number error, right? So you have to look at the context and understand meaning. Interviews for the post of lecturers will begin from Monday. So the context is referring or talking only about one position, which is lecturer position. There is no other designation mentioned, right, in the context. So it's a noun number error. The error is in part B. Yeah. Let's see the next one. What is the criteria of selection in the examination? What is the criteria of selection in the examination? Again, I will give you a clue. The clue is, which means we are referring to a singular noun number. This is an easy one if you know what is the singular form of the word that we are looking at. Again, just so you know, right, criteria is the plural form, and what is the singular form? criterion. This is the singular form, and because of the verb is, we need the singular form and not the plural form. So which means the error is in part B. We need to change criteria to criterion, right? So criteria is used when you're referring to more than one criteria. Criterion is what we need because of the singular verb is. So what is the criteria? What is the criterion? What are the criteria? Yeah, got it? Let me just put it here. But a lot of people don't know this. They still say criteria only, even if there's one, right? Even I have made this mistake in the past. So what is the criterion of selection in the examination? Which means what is that specific thing that we need to keep in mind when it comes to exam selection. Okay. So again, all of this is with respect to noun numbers. We've looked at noun numbers is what we've looked at. Yeah. So a couple of things I think so far we've only looked at prepositions in detail and noun numbers. Some of the phrases that we need to remember when it comes to noun numbers. Understand context, look for verbs, right? If the verb is singular, then just make sure that the noun also is aligning with the verb, right? So things are that. When it comes to noun numbers, so see, when it comes to prepositions, we saw missing preposition, unnecessary preposition, incorrect preposition. It's good for us to have an understanding of collocations. Third, when it came to noun number, we looked at other concepts like, collective nouns. So I'll know if this is the right collective noun for this particular noun, right? So collective nouns I need to be familiar with. I also need to look out for verbs. Is it singular or plural? Is the noun aligning with that? One of the is followed by a plural noun number. Indefinite pronouns. So if I take one error type, there are so many dimensions to it, right? I need to be familiar with all of these. Prepositions, 3 dimensions we saw. Noun numbers, 4 dimensions we saw. We will look at maybe 1 or 2 more and see what are the error types. Like I said, if spot the error is a challenge for you, you need to be a part of these sessions, which especially spot the error is going to continue for the next 2 or 3 sessions because there's a lot of error types that we need to cover, right? Today I spent a lot of time only on prepositions and noun numbers. I'm going to give an introduction to what we're going to look at in the next session in terms of the error type. Okay, so let's look at 2 or 3 more questions. If a man diligently seeks to come into the contact with the best that has been thought and said in this world, he will become simple and selfless. So where do you think the error is? Let's look at this context, right? If a man diligently seeks to come into the contact, right? What is this in definite article the doing here in part A, right? Error is in part A, and what is the error? Come into contact. I don't need that definite article, right? What is it? Unnecessary article. So article also is almost, you can relate it with preposition, right? There are 3 dimensions to it again. Either there will be an unnecessary article, or there will be a missing article, or there will be an incorrect article, right? So errors pertaining to articles you need to look out for. For example, this one, right, that we saw. If a man diligently seeks to come into contact, not into the contact, right? So that the is not necessary. And you also need to keep in mind, understand subtle differences when it comes to the definite and the indefinite article, right? Especially in jumble sentences, I've told this concept, where in the sense, when you're introducing something, you will use the indefinite article. There is a boy who moved recently to the 3rd floor in our apartment. The boy is very naughty. So there is a boy, I'm introducing the boy, I use a. But when I'm making reference to the same boy, I said the boy is naughty, right? So it's important for us to understand. See, this particular example that I shared will be beneficial for a jumble sentence question, right? For me to know, okay, which will come before in terms of sequencing. But there are other variations that you need to keep in mind, especially exceptions when it comes to articles, the indefinite article and definite article. So this is something that we're going to spend time on in the next session, right? We'll look at a lot of errors pertaining to articles. Let's look at one more question. The scientist must follow his hunches and his data wherever it may lead. The scientist must follow his hunches and his data wherever it may lead. So here again I'm going to give you some clues. The clues is this: hunches and data. Okay, hunches and data. Hunches and data. I want you to keep this in mind. So a hunch is singular, hunches is plural, more than one hunch. What's a hunch, by the way? Do you know what a hunch is? Basically a hunch is a guess, right? Or a feeling. You're guessing something, or you know, it's an intuition that you might have. So the scientist must follow his intuition, if he feels that, you know, if he's guessing that, okay, this could be the right procedure, or this is the method that I should implement or apply, then you should go for it. So the scientist must follow his hunches and his data, right? So which means again we are referring to, what is data? Facts, right? That can be obviously analyzed, or statistics. So we're talking about more than one fact or more than one statistic. So both of it refer to or relate to plural noun number, which means I keep saying this, when there is a plural noun number, what you need to look out for is, are my pronouns in place? So where is there a pronoun in the context? Yes, there is. Where is the pronoun? It. The scientist must follow his hunches and his data, plural noun number, more than one. So it cannot be it. It has to be wherever this it is referring to the hunches and the data, which means I can't use it. I have to use they, right? Because this should be in line with the plural noun number. So I need a plural pronoun. The scientist must follow his hunches and his data wherever they may lead, wherever his hunches and his data may lead or direct him to. So there you go. So pronoun errors, right? So we will be spending time on article errors, pronoun errors, and again there are different types of pronoun errors. Yeah. So for example, one must follow his elders. One must follow his elders. Why? It's incorrect. Why? Because when you have a sentence starting with one, you cannot have his or her. It has to be one again. So one must follow one's elders, right? So we're going to look at example sentences where we'll identify what are all the possible errors pertaining to pronouns, what are all the possible errors pertaining to articles, right? So maybe in the next session I will look at a couple of more error types. This session we only looked at 2, which is prepositions and noun numbers. Maybe we can look at 5 or 6 in the next session, right? Because there are, I've at least listed about 23 error types. So, you know, if we just go with 2 error types per session, imagine the number of sessions that we have to take for just spot the error alone. So I'll try and club some more errors next session, right? And we look at a number of questions pertaining to those error types. So which means when it comes to spot the error, you'll be, you will have no problem. You will be at peace that you at least know how to approach the question type, what to look for, what are the possible error types when it comes to a particular type of error. Yeah. So we'll close the session here. Yeah, all the best. Please go back and practice errors pertaining to prepositions and noun numbers. Your takeaway from this session would be get familiar with as many collocations as possible, refer to the list that we already have in our video library, right? All you need to do is just go access it, and get familiar with as many collective nouns as possible, right? There should always be some takeaway from the session, some homework that you need to do. Yeah, so do that, and I will see you in the next session. Take care. Bye-bye.